Things can't go back to the way they were, or could they, for tomorrow's protector?
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
Does the hybrid working environment apply to tomorrow's protector or just their principle? This week, I'm here with Sean West. We're going to be talking through some of the ramifications that the opening up of society this summer might have. And of course, today we're going to be joined by Mike O'Neill, Managing Director of Optimal Risk, great friend of the industry, great friend of the magazine and association. That's an interview that I have done with John Moss, but I think it's best to frame it with hybrid environments in mind. Sean, where do you think we can go with this? Because it's one thing to say we're going to have a hybrid future, but is it not the case that protectors were only having a hybrid environment last year because they themselves were not employed and therefore they can engage in it? But now they're engaged. Where's the hybrid environment?
Well, that's an interesting question, Pelham. By the very nature of our role as a protector, how can this be carried out hybrid? It can't. You know, if you're a close protection officer, you need to be there to be able to deliver that protection. You can't do that over Zoom. Whilst your principal may be able to carry out business, you yourself as a protector cannot carry that out over Zoom. I'm not sure it can be carried out in our space. I'd be interested to hear what Mike thinks, your thoughts on the matter. But yeah, no, it's a very tricky one.
Because maybe our understanding of hybrid is important, not because a protector will have a hybrid environment. Maybe they'll have a more mobile environment, and maybe like in previous editions, we had Brittany Galley, we were looking at everything operating off one mobile phone, right? So maybe a mobile or a deskless environment is, the way forward for the protector. But how have you seen the life of the hybrid principle sort of change? Because does it just mean they're at home more? And if it does, what security considerations are there?
For sure. In my case, the principals I work with, there's been a lot less travel and a lot more emphasis on the home security or the security of the location where they're based out of. And whilst they've been bedded down and they've been carrying out their business, it's added a lot more protocols that we've had to implement in respect of changeovers of personnel. There's a lot more to think about now. If you've got all of your team working in a bubble, everyone's COVID safe, everyone's been tested, nobody's leaving site during the lockdown, and then you want to do a changeover of staff. There's a lot of considerations because you're bringing people into that bubble who may infect, and it'll spread like wildfire throughout the bubble you've created. So we've had a lot of different protocols. We've had isolation pods within sites where we provide protection, where people have came in, they've been tested, they've gone to the isolation pod. We've had tests after lateral flow tests when they arrive on site, alongside a PCR test where they get a result a few days later. They've isolated for a number of days, and until they get a clear result, then the protector who's in situ can then go home with the new oncoming team to take place. And this is the case across the board with housekeepers, the butlers, nannies. It's a lot bigger operation now with a lot more thought that has to go into it.
I like that. And, you paint a very vivid picture. I can also imagine that, let's say this continues, and there's no reason to assume it won't continue. We're going to be super vigilant about all things to do with the home. And I guess we'll get away from some of the COVID issues, although that's going to be there. And maybe we'll be thinking about food delivery. Maybe we'll be thinking about the home office and all sorts of TSM considerations around there. I don't know. Is food delivery going to be a big thing? Am I imagining it?
Yeah, I mean, when the UK first went into lockdown, there was, when COVID was new, nobody knew how much this thing would spread, what the ramifications would be. We tried to limit the movements of all of our staff, so people weren't going out for food. We were getting food delivered and, essentials delivered, but then you've got to go through a protocol of who's bringing that food, how's it getting to the site. So things have relaxed a little now, but yeah, there's still, a lot to think about. In the UK, we've done it really well. The vaccination rollout has been fantastic, and we've slowly released the lockdown restrictions, which I think in the UK, a lot of people have complained to do with lockdown. But I think when you look at us alongside other countries, some things we've done, not so great, but I think the vaccination rollout has done really well, the way we're progressing at the moment as a country.
Well, that will enable us to work more hybrid, or should I say, our principles to be more hybrid. But I guess maybe this is what we're going to get through with Mike. Is it in fact unfair to say, oh, the whole world is going hybrid, the whole world is now working from home, and so on and so forth, because protectors can't? I mean, maybe there'll be a special technical EP officer who can secure principals remotely. Maybe there's some managed security service provider that can do it remotely. But maybe just like last year or the year before, in fact, when we were talking about the Bitcoin billionaires, you've got to change your approach to protecting them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think every principal is completely different. I provide services to a number of principals, and one principal, for instance, at the start of the lockdown, the message came across: nobody to worry about their work. If you can work from home, go home, be safe, be with your families. We'll get through this together. And you have another principal who, immediately upon the COVID outbreak, they want to limit the staff. They want to limit the people around them. So a lot of people will let go. And for that principal in particular, it wasn't about security. It was more about health. He says, I don't want to be surrounded. I'm not going to travel so much now. I'm not going to be going to restaurants constantly. So my security force doesn't need to be what it is currently, and trim back in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas. So yeah, no, it's different. I think as a protector, you need to be fluid and, deal with ever-changing situations. And can it be a hybrid job for a protector? I'm not so sure. There's hybrid solutions you can put in place. You can put extra technical security systems in place. But for a principal that requires, personal protection, that human element needs to be there, and it's not going to go away.
Love it. Well, let's get into it then with Mike O'Neill. Let's hear his thoughts. Of course, this is all off the back of an article that Mike wrote recently, and I'm very interested to see how this matches up with our initial thoughts. Looking forward to this great session.
And now, let's meet one of the contributors to the Circuit magazine.
Hybrid working in the corporate security professional. Mike O'Neill, it's a pleasure to have you here. You're the Managing Director of Optimal Risk, great friend of the industry and the association. Can't believe it's taken this long to have you on. Great to have you here. How are you doing?
Hi, Philip. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
We're good. I'm here with John, and we're bustling to go into a whole new range of topics for the magazine. One of the big topics at the moment is hybrid working. But if we take a step back, what do you think is wrong at the moment, or what is the problem that we're going to have to solve when we come out of lockdown?
Well, I think there's a number of points to look at there. I think, first of all, it's worth saying that I've been impressed really by how well the commercial world has pivoted towards working from home now over 14 months ago when lockdown first came in. People have been very innovative, and I think it's matured in some ways. I don't think it's going to be everyone working from home forever. Attractive as it might be, I think people are starting to push back. I saw the head of Netflix made a comment the other day that we're losing out on a lot of creativity and interaction with our colleagues. You can do so much over Zoom that I think it's I should say other online conference facilities are available, but you have to, it's a 2D world. That's how I describe it. So I think there is a bit of a hunger for people to get back. But I think we will see this hybrid issue. There's been a lot of security issues raised around that, in increased vulnerability to cyber attack. You've got GDPR issues with other people being able to see documents or open screens in in the home or a shared living space. We've also had, obviously, many offices either empty or very sparsely populated, which brings on different security problems. But I think as well, having used the train probably half a dozen or 8 times during the last year, I've noticed that they're getting busier and busier, and I think there is a real thirst to get back and try and get the economy open again.
I like it, but then hybrid working in particular, as opposed to complete reversal, obviously it's something many people are thinking about. But where does your enthusiasm for particularly hybrid working come from? Because why not complete reversal?
I would say that we've all been moving towards a more hybrid way of working over the last few years. The ubiquitous laptop that people carry around, mobile phones, the connectivity capability, and we're all quite used to taking calls at different times of the day. And if it's an early morning call, you might log on from home before you head off to the office, or go off to visit clients during the day. So I think we've moved towards that a lot. I've been following this and read some interesting sort of property industry articles where organizations are looking to move away potentially from the big centralized headquarters building, slim that down where people go when they need to, but also looking at building up a series of regional hubs. I think that we'll see that. And again, people won't necessarily be based there full time. If they have a client-facing role, they might be seeing clients 1 or 2 days a week. They might work from home 1 or 2 days a week and go into the office that 1 or 2 days a week. And I think there's no doubt that getting people in a room can be a lot more productive if the meeting's well managed. I think the other point, particularly looking at our sector, the broader security sector, security guards are still going to have to obviously be in location where they're contracted to be. Close protection professionals are going to be facing different problems. Their principal may well be working from home 1 or 2 days a week. So rather than them picking them up and taking to the office, the risk and threat assessments are going to have to be adjusted to take into account that he may well be there or maybe traveling to other locations at that time. And also how we rotate teams around and get people enough working days that they're making a living wage, as well as making sure that we're facilitating the requirements of the principal and their companies. So I think there's some interesting challenges lying ahead.
I love that. And actually now is the time in our quickfire questions when I'd usually say, what do you want the uninitiated to know? But in fact, I think for this topic, we sort of almost have to bundle it into what you've just been talking about, because it's yet to happen, or it's an emerging theme. So actually, I'd like to bring in John to look at this from a few different angles.
Hi, Mike. It's great to have you on the podcast. As the owner of a successful security business that operates out of one of the busiest cities in the world, looking back over the last 12 months, what's been the biggest challenges for yourself for optimal risk over that time, going right back to the start of the pandemic? And how did you pivot, or how did you head them off?
As I'm sure for a lot of people, we don't provide man guarding services. So a lot of our business in that sector just came to a halt. Oddly enough, we've expanded a couple of contracts in that area and started 1 or 2 as well. So that worked. Our technical side of the business was looking, we quite early got involved with the body temperature measurement systems based on thermal cameras. So that kept us very busy for a few months last summer when a lot of organizations were looking at installing those. And the main thinking behind that really was to improve the employee confidence that the organizations were taking their duty of care very seriously. We had to be very flexible and very adaptable, working with our clients both providing the services that they were looking for, but also working with them in a consulting type role to try and look at ways to adapt and overcome the problems that were brought on by lockdown. So it was very fast paced. It was very challenging. It was fascinating as well. You could see how some organizations just couldn't see a way forward. Others were very, very swift. Business continuity plans kicked in some organizations incredibly quickly. Others, lots of people hunkered down, but then realized they had to find safe working methods. So it was actually, it was quite stretching, to be fair. But I think we seemed to come through it quite well. And that was an experience. I'm not sure I'd like to see another year or so of that. But yeah, it's been good.
There was certainly a lot of uncertainty at the beginning, not really fully understanding what we were facing, the scope and scale of it. And you talking about continuity planning and so on there. I saw a lot of people being caught out, mostly because the continuity plans that had been created weren't really factoring in things of this size and scale. And I'm just wondering now, given that we've gone through that, what has remained in place? What will you keep and what will you toss? Like maybe just the top one or two takeaways.
I'm trying to remember, an American general came out with a great phrase, which is plans are useless, but planning is everything. And I think where those business continuity plans didn't work is because they were really quite a technical approach. I think the organizations that did better have embraced over the last few years an approach to resilience planning, which is we don't know what's going to happen, but we've got to prepare ourselves to be able to deal with that. And that might sound a bit loose, but actually it's the point about not being too structured, understanding the issues that can arise over communication. That's one of the key aspects of it. And I think it's that having a resilience-based mindset allows you to respond with the flexibility and agility that you need at times like that. So I think we're going to see more of that. Less of the few inches thick business continuity plan and more about that preparation, desktop exercises. They don't have to be big. They don't have to challenge. I mean, if anyone had talked about a 14-month lockdown in a crisis management exercise in 2019, they'd have been laughed out of the room. I don't think that's going to happen again. So we just have to be prepared for the unexpected and work to deal with that.
Yeah, what I'm really hearing there is communication and change in mentality, and I couldn't agree more. I think communication's been really obvious. I mean, even just what we're doing now as a kind of a byproduct, in a good sense as well. It's not just to reflect on all the negatives, right? Some really good things, I believe, have come out of this time, and that they're here to stay. Communications being one of them. And like you say, I think this mindset, having a more flexible, adaptable mindset, not being so rigid, but also being open to the planning, is crucial.
Well, as both of us being ex-paras, I am going to bring in the regimental motto, utrinque paratus, ready for anything. And I think that's definitely the mindset that we need to take forward, both, in our own personal lives, but definitely in our business lives, not only for our own businesses, but also when we're dealing with clients and try and open their eyes to the things that can happen to them. I heard a great phrase in another conference I was involved in, where we're talking about black swan events, which obviously are those things which come along very rarely but cause huge impact. And the phrase came up of a grey rhino event, which happens much more regularly but still has huge impact. So it's the first time I'd heard it. So I was determined to get to use grey rhino as a phrase. So hopefully that will stay in the podcast.
Yeah, it's here for posterity now.
Yeah.
You said it here first.
Okay. But I think that was it's been really interesting. I think picking up on your point there, John, I think there has been a lot that's been learned. And I think, there's been a great tribute to, human resourcefulness and adaptability in the way that people have dealt with this. One of my worries is I think there will be impact on people in terms of the lockdown, those who haven't been able to, get out very much or even engage with other people. I heard something on the radio about a woman that hadn't actually spoken to, an old lady that hadn't actually spoken to anyone for 14 months since lockdown started. And somebody got involved with that and was giving us some help. And you think, and there will be pockets of people that have suffered, and I think we all need to be open to that. And the last few years have seen a much more developed and broadening understanding of mental health, and I think we all owe it to each other to keep our eyes open and make sure that we're flexible, we're understanding, and if we see people that we think need help, work out a way that we can try and help them, because there will be impact. If we lift off all restrictions on June the 21st, as I planned, there are still going to be huge aftershocks. So we need to be careful and aware of those.
Yeah, it's a great shout out, especially given that it's Mental Health Awareness Week right now. It's very topical. And it's something within our communities as well that we're really trying to focus on and be a support mechanism for. None of us are medical practitioners. We're not mental health experts, but we've been there. We can relate to what other people are going through, and just to be there as a listening ear for anyone who needs it, I think will probably be a huge comfort to people right now.
There are some, I've got some people who are doing some online mental health awareness training. And the feedback that I've been getting from that is really positive. They're all learning a lot, but also it's taking away the mystique for them. I think we all have a natural inclination to think, I'm not a mental health specialist, I don't know what to do, but sometimes just putting that metaphorical arm around somebody and saying, "You okay?" that can help a lot. So I think taking the mystique and the anxiety away from it can help us all, be a little bit more helpful to others.
Which is in fact a very important facet of this hybrid working topic that we're looking at, because we assume that hybrid might be better, or at least we're hoping that it might be better, yet there will be winners and losers. There will be people who would like to be home working but have to be frontline, and vice versa. You wrote a very interesting article the other month, which I guess inspired this hybrid working topic as well. Changing tact a little bit, you explored the supply chain and the ability to achieve resilience through seeing the supply chain, given that maybe during COVID, even if you were secure, maybe different elements couldn't follow through for you. How important is that? And I guess maybe on a practical level, how would a solo practitioner or a small business get greater visibility of their supply chain when we come out of all of this?
It's something we've been pushing for a few years, actually. It's that having the awareness of your supply chain and the vulnerabilities that the individual companies within that might be open to. So you as a company may think, great, we've got our resilience planning in place. We know what's going to happen, how we respond to this. And your procurement department have hammered the pricing down on one of your major suppliers. So they're operating on quite thin margins, don't have the resilience or the fat in the system. So something happens, they're going to fall over. They don't have the ability or agility to respond. So it works for all different organizations. I mean, you think of us, where do we get supplies? We talked about communications. If the communications network goes down, we're all completely messed up. Looking back at the smaller companies, solo operators, all of those things, it's about analyzing the things that you rely on every day and think, if this happened, what could I do? think about anything that you need to provide the services to your clients. How do you build in flexibility around that? And I don't forget how when we've seen that the card networks have gone down and people haven't been able to pay in supermarkets. Seems a simple thing, but how are you going to fill up with petrol if the card machines aren't working? We're seeing it out in America. Look at the reliance on the pipeline where they've had a ransomware attack. The Irish NHS, or their version of the health services, has had a ransomware attack that stalled their vaccination program. So look at these vulnerabilities and how dependent we are on these little focal points. So look at the single points of failure that exist within your operating environment and work to try and back those up or have alternatives in place.
Mike, I know it's a topic that's big on your agenda, and we discuss it a lot on the events and so on, and that is cyber vulnerability. And, we're hearing about it all the time now, and it's particularly the big stories that we're hearing, the SolarWinds and the pipeline being the most recent one. But obviously, this has got to be a threat for anyone. So how do smaller businesses prepare for something like this? What are your concerns right now?
I think the things that businesses have to do is have a look at the way they structure their IT and their communications, and either get some specialist advice, but keep all your programs up to date. Make sure that all the updates that come out are implemented. Make sure that you're using two-factor authentication wherever you can. Make sure that you keep all your colleagues up to date on the latest threats, on phishing, awareness of if you receive a strange email that's got a video attached to it, hang on, think, why am I getting this? Do I really want to open this? I don't know this person. So it's just keeping that same point across most of yes, you've got SolarWinds and all the sort of high-end attacks, but there are so many really simple attacks that people fall for. I mean, there's still a lot of telephone scamming going on. You've got the CEO attack on a Friday where they ask you to change, ask the finance department to make a payment to this particular client or change payment details. It's maintaining people's awareness about that. I know you do through the BBA, sort of keep raising that awareness. I think, again, the new app is working. It's that getting that message out there, just reminding people. You can't keep hammering it home every day, but a reminder with some anecdotal examples, I think, always works well. Tell people that, look, you're vulnerable to this. This is how it happened to somebody else. And they might think, oh, next time that happens, I'm not going to fall for it. But I think it was Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. And I think that's the way that we have to go forward.
And that, I think, is key to the hybrid working topic that, at least, you were writing about the other day. And we had Brittany Galley on the other day from GST, getting security done. And she was talking a lot about deskless working. And so I was thinking, actually, is that what maybe our colleagues have to be aware of? Not well, it's one form of hybrid working. If this summer heralds a turning point, we're really talking about deskless working, and so mobile first, because you're going to have operators on the move, frontline staff outside, and periodically back at some sort of desktop. What do you think? Is that a realistic vision again, or is there another type of hybrid working we should sort of watch out for?
No, I think one of the points you talk about the deskless working. I think the people that I've particularly felt sorry for during this period are those people that are maybe house sharing, maybe in their first or second job, with a large multinational or whatever organization they're working for, told to work from home, and effectively they've got their bedroom, which becomes a 24-hour prison, and they're supposed to find a convenient way of working, propping their laptop literally on their lap. And that's not healthy. It's an occupational health issue.
And staying with the deskless workforce, as a lot of the security industry already is and has been for a long time, deskless in many ways. And thinking about the technical innovations that can make that more efficient and more productive throughout the whole reporting chain, is that something that Optimal Risk is looking into, Mike?
I'm definitely up for anything that makes life easier. It's funny you say that. We're looking at a new platform for rostering and managing personnel issues, because I think there are some solutions out there. But I definitely think we have to look at the efficiencies that we can get from modern technology. We need to make sure that we're not a slave to these things. Sometimes technology drives you in a way that actually is not the most efficient. So I think we're seeing a lot of really good apps coming out. The visibility of being able to understand where your colleagues are in terms of availability for meetings and things, I think that's really good. But of course, and if you've got back-to-back Zoom or Teams calls, when do you actually do the work product that's come out of that? The work that your colleagues are expecting you to deliver in time for the next one when it's back-to-back meetings. So I think we've got, and this also touches back onto the mental health aspect as well. And I think we'll all, accept that, you don't have to be writing something. You don't have to be meeting with people to be productive all the time.
Great sentiments. And of course, that increase of productivity might have a cost somewhere. So that's an emerging topic as well. I guess we're looking at a variety of topics throughout the Circuit Magazine and, corresponding Circuit Magazine podcast. This is an evolving thing. And I'd like to maybe come back to this in 6 to 8 months and say, were our predictions correct? Or, hopefully we don't do any more lockdowns and so on. But I think this is a great way forward. So Mike, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Finally, you've been a great friend of the industry, great friend to me and to John and to the association. It's been a pleasure having you, and we look forward to seeing what this summer brings.
Thanks, Pelham. Great to chat to you and to John.
Nice to chat, Mike.
Take care, John. Take care, Pelham. Bye-bye.
Great to hear from Mike O'Neill. Really appreciate his help on a personal level and a professional level. It's a great leader in the industry, and please do reach out to him. Obviously, a lot of this inquiry about hybrid working sort of got inspired by an article he recently wrote, and he looked at that flexibility and the way to make a robust and resilient workforce, even in times of crisis. Sean, what did you take away from today's session?
No, I think Mike's great. A lot of respect for the guy, coming from a similar parachute regiment background as well, which is great. I think one thing I take away from it, I know he spoke about supply chain security, and I think it's important. And I think a lot of companies during the crisis will have evaluated different suppliers that they use. And moving forward, you will look to use, reputable companies as opposed to, one-man bands who maybe weren't able to help you during the crisis. As opposed to how a more established supplier could, or it may have been the flip side where the established supplier couldn't help you during the crisis, and the smaller companies had a more ability to maneuver and pivot and make, lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah, no, I like that. Lemonade out of lemons. But that's the magic of perhaps the solo operator. They might be in that sweet spot, and they might have capitalized on this time, and they may not be so small anymore. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, so many companies have used it, the crisis, and went from zero to hero in such a short space of time. And I take my hats off to them for sure.
And that's something Mike was sort of reflecting on as well. Some people were presented by the headlight beams and they behaved like a rabbit, and some people didn't, and I can't find a better analogy for that, but it's just an interesting way to look at how people have reacted. Now, our hearts do go out to people who have not been able to capitalize. Of course, it's not all been fun and games, and it's not all been within people's control. But I like this approach of saying, well, no actual grand reopening of society in the summer. It's going to be gradual or hybrid, which kind of ties back to our original discussion before the interview, which is who is going to be hybrid? Is it going to be the protector? Probably not. It's going to be much more the principal, or I suppose a security consultant, who is not hands-on with the principal. Maybe that will be equally hybrid. But yes, coming back to the present day though, before we get into this future environment, what have we got coming up with the magazine?
We have issue 58, which will be coming out soon. We're just finishing off getting in our contributions from regular contributors. If anyone else would like to produce an article for the magazine or come for an interview on the Circuit podcast, please feel free to get in touch. We also have the upcoming Protective Mobility Forum, which yourself is running, Pelham, on the 9th of June. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's exciting because some people might know I have a sweet spot for protective mobility. I used to run armored vehicle events, and so what I've done is I've got a few case studies, a few exposés of excellent careers for drivers, and a few technology sessions to say, well, everyone was obsessed with cleanliness and hygiene during COVID. Sure, that won't go away, but what's coming next? So I've just secured an excellent speaker on future run flat systems. It's quite timely. Why run flat in particular? Well, everyone probably saw that very, very excellent driving by the South African driver that went around the internet. I don't think that would have been possible without run flat systems. So that's why I pick it up. And we're going to open with a great live session from Joe Ortera of the VDI. And Joe has really helped us with this. So it's going to be practical skills and application for the protector in the field of protective mobility, courses and training that is really relevant and not just sexy. Of course, most of the protected mobility is sexy, so we can't help it. Who am I to get in the way? But it's going to be really applicable.
Yeah, another, yourself as someone who's pivoted really well during the pandemic, you've managed to change your physical event business into providing virtual events. And I know you're looking soon to come back to physical events, and I know you've got a bit of a spin on that. You've got a physical event booked in Phoenix, but you're not actually going to be there. How's that working?
Well, I mean, I say I'm not going to be there. It's just because I made a calculated risk that we're not going to be allowed into the States in August. I've got a local team to run it anyway. And, you mentioned return to physical events. I think that we're going to view virtual events and physical events as basically different types of fruit. Apples and oranges. They're both fruit, but they're both different. This, for example, podcast has been really key to get people from around the world talking. As have our virtual events, right? Our virtual events where we bring people from Asia and Latin America and Africa and Europe and the Middle East. Let's include everyone here. That's not something that we can easily do in a physical format without great expense. And topics change. So if something new comes up, we can react really quickly. The physical ones, I think, can be really good for networking, for camaraderie, for inspiration. But I think they're going to have more of a wow factor. Of course, in the beginning, meeting someone will be a wow factor. that actual, there's a physical person. That's amazing. But yeah, so 19th of August is the 5th annual Convergence Forum, and we will enjoy a face-to-face session. But yeah, other than that, we've got great interactivity on the app. I know, Sean, you've been asking many questions, not least today. I think you asked a big question on the app. What are you trying to get people to engage with?
Well, I think some people sit in the background in different communities, and they absorb the information, which is great. But sometimes I think it's good to get involved by, if you've got a burning question you don't know the answer, please ask it. If you don't know the answer, then sure as hell somebody else doesn't also. And if you ask, someone else contributes, gives you the answer. The person who gives the answer, it brings someone else in, and it brings a whole lot of protectors and professionals into the discussion, and everybody can learn and grow. And I just think it's a great place for people to network.
It is indeed, because someone asked a question, and then all right, maybe there was a bit of they wanted a hurried answer, right? However, different parts of our community wake up at different times, including myself. So eventually we were able to get them an answer. So within 24 hours, that person had an answer, which I think is testament to the power of the community. But yeah, hybrid environments, certainly interesting. Even if you as a protector, you're not going to have a hybrid environment yourself, you're going to be protecting someone with a hybrid environment. Maybe that's a key takeaway. All right. Well, from Sean and myself, thanks to Mike O'Neill for coming on and being such a great guest. We look forward to another fantastic edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.